Hello guys and welcome. This is Jim Tyler from PowerShellEngineer.com here today to try to teach you PowerShell as quick as we can, hopefully under an hour. I think it's possible. We'll see, whatever the title says, right? Uh, yeah, so I'm hoping to be able to go through that really quickly with you guys. Just a quick background, super quick background on myself. I'm a former Amazon engineer. I've got a Master of Science in Information Systems. I'm currently a K-12 Director of Technology for a public school district in Michigan, and I am just a huge PowerShell fanatic. Recently, I gave a couple presentations at a statewide conference on PowerShell, notably wearing a PowerShell shirt. You can follow me on Twitter at PowerShellEng, and stay in touch. And then also please subscribe to my newsletter, jimtyler.substack.com, entitled PowerShell Engineer. If you want to see some tips and tricks that I'm sharing out to you guys, that is a 100% free newsletter. So let's jump right into it. I love going over, hey, what is PowerShell? And I think Microsoft, to their credit, breaks it down really well. What is PowerShell? It is both a command line shell and a scripting language. So I love that it's broken down this way because it really is sort of hard to explain what PowerShell is sometimes, right? It's that blue CMD, right? So to get to PowerShell, all you have to do is type PowerShell when you're searching for it. You'll see I've already got it down here. And boom, you're in PowerShell. Now, what I like to do is set the font size. Let's make it a little bit bigger. So if we right-click the bar there, go to Properties, go to Font, you'll see I've already got it at 24. I think that's actually pretty good, probably from making other videos. And now we are in there. So if you want to check the version of PowerShell, you would just invoke this environment variable, which we'll get more into variables, and go to .psversion, boom. So you'll see that this is just a mere PowerShell 5. Obviously, 7 is out. We'll just be going through PowerShell 5 because, hey, that's good enough for us to start learning a couple different things with PowerShell. So I want to jump into comparing it PowerShell with command prompt. So PowerShell can basically do anything that command prompt does. And I brought this up in a video I had posted on my channel before, and I believe somebody said something like you can't run batch files, which is true, or batch commands. I can't remember exactly. I have to go back and reference that, but for the most part, it's nearly true. So if you're used to command prompt, you'll notice that this works the same way. You can just ping whatever you'd like.com. So let's be ping spacex.com. All right. Works just like it would in command prompt. You know, you can change directories. Just go up a directory. That's actually fine. So you'll notice, actually, let's go ahead and go to our scripts directory. So we'll be in there later. That's a folder I've already made. You see it works the same. But of course, the huge difference is that you can use PowerShell Cmdlets, and there's a lot of specialized functions available with PowerShell that you can do. So one thing I want to note too is the up arrow in PowerShell. You can go up and do some of the same commands you did before. Actually do a CD again just by going up. All right, and let's just go ahead and change back into scripts. And if you notice what I did right there, which you probably can't notice because you can't see my keyboard, but if something can be auto-completed, you can just do a tab complete. So I start typing scripts, it knows that it matches that pattern to a point, it says, hey, there's nothing else but scripts there. You hit a tab complete, and boom, you don't have to type as much. So that's just a good pro tip for when you're using PowerShell to be aware of the tab complete and the up arrow. So also, before we get into running our scripts, I just want to note too, sometimes people have errors right away. And that's because the execution policy is not set correctly. So let's take a look at setting that. So to get your current execution policy, you would type get execution policy, and it's remote signed. So that is allowing me to run my own PowerShell scripts that aren't sort of verified by Microsoft. And that's the way I have it set right now. But by default, it's set to restricted, I believe. So if I go to set it, actually, I believe this won't work. We'll just go ahead and do our tab complete already. And we'll put it to restricted. And I don't think this will work because I'm not running this as an admin. Maybe it will. Nope, don't have access to that registry key. So what we can do, you'll notice down here, I've got this PowerShell already running. I can right click that, do a run as administrator. See my kids there probably in the background. All right, set execution policy restricted. Let's go yes. All right, so if we do our get execution policy, see that it's restricted. We'll do the up arrow, we'll go back. And I actually want to put that back to remote. Oh, it knows tab complete. We want to do that to remote signed so we can run custom scripts. Pretty cool. We'll leave that window open. But I want to make sure that you have that set because what we're going to do next is write our first script. And sometimes that will not work unless you have that policy set. So what we're going to do is go to your search bar. We're going to open up the PowerShell ISE, that stands for Integrated Scripting Environment. And that's an editor that comes with Windows for free, which is great. And it's actually pretty decent for free. And it'll allow us to make PowerShell scripts. So that's exactly what we're going to do. You see it's starting there. It might be cut off a little bit on my screen. I've got a super wide monitor. I don't want to make this video super wide. And you'll notice that it's just sitting there, PowerShell ISE. You'll notice we'll have an editing area up here, and we've got an actual console down here that we can see. And we'll go ahead and write our first script. Actually, let's set the, I want to make this a little bit bigger too. Let's just zoom in. That's just Control plus. Make this maybe a lot bigger. I don't really want this command thing over here. I want you guys to actually be able to see how big can we make it. 220%. I think that works. I don't know. All right, cool. So what we're going to do is write our very first script, and we're going to write that using the write host commandlet. So if you type write-host, and you'll see it, ISE is pretty cool. It will try to autocomplete. Boom, write host. You can just actually even let it complete. And we're going to do a hello world. We'll do capital W. I think that's probably more standard. I don't know what the correct thing is. Hey, it's our script. We can do whatever we want with it. So let's do the hello world. We'll go ahead and save that. That's my sports coding right there. That's from Code with Sports. We just want to go into the scripts. And we'll do hello world. Go ahead and save that. Boom, it's saved. We can actually run it right here by pressing this play button. So let's go ahead and do that. And all it does, real simple, is print back hello world to us. And you'll note too that it ran the script right here, hello world.ps1. Now this file extension is what PowerShell ISE will save these as by default, which is pretty cool. So definitely good to know. If you see in these files, it's a PowerShell file. And if you try to pull one off the internet, Google Chrome might complain to you about it. So that's pretty sweet. So let's go ahead and do comments. Now, if you're familiar with coding, if you're not, that's all right. A comment is a line of code that is not going to get executed. So we're going to just make my first comment. Yay. All right, we'll go ahead and click our floppy disk to save. And if we execute this again, see that that's not there because ISE has even greened this out, so you can tell that it can't be seen, which is pretty sweet. And this is going to be for once you start getting into really big scripts, you might want to put a comment to be like, hey, we're printing this variable back, or we're assessing this information, or whatever you're doing with your script, just so while you're reviewing it, you're able to, just see what the script actually does, because you may not remember. You code something, you come back to it a year later because you've got to change it, you may not remember. So, let's see here. We can also use this to disable code without deleting that. So we can say we don't want this right host here anymore. We can go ahead and put a hash sign in front of it, or pound sign. We press our play. Now it does nothing. Maybe we don't want to write that because we don't want that particular feedback. So I'll undo that. We'll go ahead and save. And let's go ahead and delve into what are commandlets. So commandlets are predefined functions that perform a specific task. And in fact, you've already used one, the right host. And actually, you used another one before too, if you had to set your execution policy with the set and get execution policy. So all commandlets follow a verb dash noun format when you're naming them. So they're pretty easy to identify when you're looking at PowerShell code. You can see them pretty quickly right there. It's normally, it's always unless it's a custom function someone else made that maybe wasn't following the standard, it's a verb and then a noun. So right host. When we work with ActiveDirectory later, you'll see that we'll work with one called Get-ADUser, that kind of thing. So I think you get that. And also just a note too, when I say commandlet, you'll see this around. It's written like this, Cmdlet. So if you see that, that's pronounced commandlet. And just want to make sure that you were aware of that in case you start Googling stuff for commandlets and you're not typing command let. Although maybe Google would correct you on that. So far we've only worked with commandlets that, well, no, that's not true. The set execution policy had a remote signed. We were working with parameters there, but I want to just demonstrate to this right host, for instance, in your very first script, does not have any parameters. So what you could do, what right host is actually doing is writing a new line automatically at the end. So we could say hello again. Let's just go ahead and give it a shot. I did the Control S to automatically save. I'll go ahead and press play. So we see hello world, hello again. There's automatically a new line being put in there. So yeah, if you're doing that, maybe you don't want the new line. So an example, the right host commandlet has a parameter called no new line. As soon as you hit the dash, ISE is pretty cool. It'll start giving you all the different parameters that are available. So you can actually just go ahead and do that. Do the no new line. We'll do a save. And you'll see that it just didn't do the new line anymore. So just be aware when you're doing commandlets, and we'll see this over and over again once we get really deep into this, we will be able to, we'll be using these parameters over and over again. So maybe asking, how do you find commandlets? And that's a really great question. And there's actually a get command. And what we can do, let's go back here. And just so you know too, just a housekeeping thing, you can press clear if you want to clear up the screen. Boom. You don't want to see all that stuff that was there before. I like doing that. So if you want to find commandlets, you can use the get command, which is funny. So we'll do get command, and we'll actually use a parameter command type, and then we'll do commandlet. And that may take a second to load, and this will give you all of the commandlets that are available. I've got a lot of stuff installed on here. I've got a lot of Azure things. Should see some AWS things. Jeez, yeah, there are a lot of Azure things. Wow. And we'll do a Control C. Actually, it looks like that maybe that was quite a bit. What's going on here? Oh no, I was just hidden down here. All right. Uh, so that gives me all the different commandlets I have, and I've worked with a couple different cloud platforms, all sorts of stuff. So I got a couple extra modules installed. Yeah, and if you actually notice, sorry, a little glitch there. Uh, you'll see these custom functions here, and you'll actually see what module they're from. Or these custom commandlets. So from the Azure one, you'll see Azure stuff. Uh, update Azure VM, that kind of thing. I've got the Google Cloud one installed where you can write a GCS object that would be like backing up a file, for instance, straight to the Google Cloud. Now there's some extra steps to get those things configured when you do install these kinds of custom modules, but just to reiterate or to say, a module is just a collection of specialized commandlets or functions that do specialized things. So it's definitely pretty sweet, and it's definitely worth looking at. But I want to shift gears and talk about the get help commandlet. And if you do get help asterisk, you will get all of the help articles that are literally every single help article that's available. That you can access right here in the command shell. Now that might take a second here. We may want to cancel that because that's kind of a lot. But all right, I did a Control C to cancel that. But to use it to do an example of that, we could do a get help for right host, and it'll tell us, hey, this is right host. This is oh, I don't have it up to date, but it gives us the syntax and that kind of thing. So if I had my help modules up to date, it would show everything. Actually, let's see if we do a dash detailed. I think that would do it. Yeah, so we'll have to get those up to date, or maybe a full. Nah, yeah. So I just don't have them here. But when you're up to date with these help the get help modules or get help articles, uh, you can definitely get all the different things available for them to do. Wait, no, actually, no, that gave it to it. Yeah, yeah, okay, yeah, full. Yeah, so here we can see all the different parameters we have: background color, foreground color, no new line like we already used, object, separator. Not a whole lot for right host, but yeah. So sorry to reiterate, I thought that was the same output again because it gave this message. But yeah, it actually does have the all the different things you can do with it. So if you're ever like, hey, is there a thing I'm trying to do with this commandlet and I can't quite figure out what's going on, or what's, it's just giving me errors, you can use get help. It's super helpful. But to be honest too, a lot of times I'm just Googling stuff right away and finding stuff off of Stack Overflow. When you do that, be careful because you don't want to just copy and paste stuff off of random websites unless you know exactly what it's doing. So one of the other major important things with PowerShell that you can do that makes it so powerful is piping commands. Now, piping a command is a way of saying combining commands into pipelines in PowerShell. So try to think of it actually more of as a chain. So you'll have command 1 and then you pipe it into command 2, and actually we can just show you what we'll just make up a fake function here. And we'll do the pipe, and that is shift slash, and that'll be right above the enter key, and command 2. So this would be saying, hey, we want to pipe the result of command 1 into command 2. And let's just do a simple example of that. We can just kind of call a string, may the force be with you. And we'll do a pipe, and we'll pipe it into the out file commandlet. And we'll just say force with who dot txt. All right. So if I do a ls, which works in PowerShell, by the way, I know it's an alias. We'll see our hello world, which you already made, and force with who.text. And if we do a cat, which just reads the file, we'll see, hey, look, inside of that file is force with who.text, which is pretty cool. So that's a pretty straightforward piping example. You will see that over and over again, definitely when you start working with complex scripts. That piping is just a super powerful use of PowerShell. So let's start talking about PowerShell variables. Now, a variable is just a container. I don't know if you've worked with programming before or not, but if not, we're going to make one right now. In PowerShell, you invoke variables by using the $sign. We'll just set our first variable right now, and we'll set it to fave character. And we'll say it's equal to SpongeBob. Boom. So that's it. You've now set a variable, and now you can actually invoke that variable a couple different ways. You could just say, hey, fave character, and actually you can again tab complete. Oh, whoops. Oh yeah, there's the false with the environment variable. Tab complete, and you'll get your variable. If you just press enter, it'll give you the value of your variable back, which is pretty nice. Now you can also, let's do fav, tab complete that, and let's just say we could pipe this variable into a text file. So we use our out file again. Do fave character txt. Do an ls on our directory. Now we see fave character there. If we do a cat on fave character, now I just did that pretty quick, but I literally just did cat and then space F, and I tab completed that. You'll see that it's SpongeBob. So that is how easy it is to invoke a variable. Now there's different PowerShell data types, and what our fave character variable is right there is actually a string, but there's also integers, floating points, which are just decimals, and booleans. So to determine the type of a variable, you can actually use the getType method on it. So if we do SpongeBob, getType, jeez, I keep doing that. For our fave character, we'll do getType. PowerShell lets us know that, hey, this is a string. But now if I want to set this to something else, say I just want to set it to 5, which doesn't make any sense. And I'll just go up. I want to call the getType again. We'll see now that it's an int32, which is an integer. We'll just go up, set it again. We'll set it to a floating point. We'll say 5.5. We'll see that it's a double, which is a type of floating point. We're not going to delve too much into the types for the sake of this because we're trying to learn this quickly. And if we want to set it to a boolean, which is a true or false or 0 or 1, but we'll set it to a true in PowerShell. We'll do our getType again. We'll see that it is a boolean. So we can definitely, I'm going to go back and just set it to SpongeBob again, in case we decide we want to use that again as we're explaining this stuff. You can see here, this is a great demonstration of the different types. There are different types, and you can't, and we can work with these types differently. So say you could do arithmetic with different variables, and actually we can just do a quick demo of that. X equals 5, Y equals 3. You can literally just do arithmetic right here in PowerShell, add those together. You could multiply them, that kind of thing. So, but if you try to do X times fave character, it's going to complain to you because, hey, cannot convert value SpongeBob to type integer, right? So that's where types are really important to know if you're working with numbers, strings, booleans, decimals. You have to really be cognizant of that as you go forward. But as an intro, I wanted to make you aware of it. Now, Another really critical thing with PowerShell, and I know I sound like a broken record because there's stuff I keep saying that, but this is super, super important. Everything in PowerShell is an object. Now, the best analogy of this, and I don't know who came up with it. I know, shout out to Chris Thomas, a desktop engineer for Ingham ISD here in Michigan. He used the think of the object of a bike, and it's got different properties. And so, say a wheel size is a property of the bike, right? Or the type of brakes would be a property of the bike. So a bike would be a class of an object, but the wheel size for an adult bike is going to be different than a kid's bike. So when we think about objects, an object is of a particular class. So if we were to make a bike object, it would be of the class of a bike. Now, that's just kind of a little more detailed, but and I won't get into that too much, but the variables you've already worked with are also objects. So if we talk about our fave character, we could say the fave character object that has the value SpongeBob also has other properties like length, and this is built into PowerShell. So if I type length, it'll give me the character length of this object. So if you want to get all of the properties of our fave character, what we could do is do fave character, and we'll use a pipe right away, and we'll pipe that object into the select object commandlet, and we'll use a property parameter. And we won't even specify the property, we'll just do an asterisk, which is like a wildcard for all of the properties. And because it's just a string, all it has is length property, right? So, yeah, that's, these are pretty straightforward objects. Now, that said, the best method to use is the GetMember commandlet. So let's go ahead and try that. Let's do GetMember. And we'll input the object. And I think that should autocomplete, yeah. And then we'll do it on our fave character. And actually, sorry, that's not for selecting the properties. This is for getting the different methods that we can apply to this object. So the methods, the properties are sort of stacked. The methods are sort of something like that you can, to go back to the bike analogy, a method of the bike would be to ride bike. So say you had a bike object, you could, you wanted to ride it, you would invoke the ride method, right? So we actually already did this if we scroll back up with the get type, right? And we'll actually see get type right here as a method that can be called on this object. So we've actually already demoed this, but I just wanted to point it out. If you do the get member commandlet and pipe an object to it, you can figure out what you can even do to it. And actually, this is pretty nice here because it tells you what you can do to it. And there's a lot of different stuff you can do, and the more complex, different kinds of objects you have, you may have more or less methods that you can sort of call on those objects. So that's it for the objects. So let's move on to talking about arrays. So an array is actually a collection of variables that you invoke into one variable. And let's just go ahead and make one so it's a little bit easier to when you see it than explaining it. So I want to make one just called Jedi, and we will make it. The way to start adding values to it is to do the @ sign, and then you're going to want to do parentheses. Now the variables inside of it are separated by comma. So we'll add Obi-Wan Kenobi, Luke Skywalker, Yoda. I don't know how long we need to keep going here. Let's add one more just for the sake of it. Mace Windu. All right. Boom. So if we wanted to, we've now just set an array into the Jedi variable, which is also an object. So if we want to just see what's in that, let's just type Jedi, $Jedi. Boom. PowerShell gives that all back to us, prints them right back. Pretty cool. And if we go ahead, if we went ahead and just did the get type method, we'll see that it's an object, but the base type is system.array, right? Now, if you wanted to retrieve values from those specific values, so you, all right, I've got this sort of group of associated data of Jedis that I'm aware of, and it's got all their different names in there. But I just want to find the very first Jedi in the list. Well, what you would do is Jedi, and then you do a bracket, and then 0. We'll see that's Obi-Wan Kenobi. And we can actually move up the list here, and we'll go through all of them. Oops. Yeah, no, that's what I wanted to do. All right. So that's how you would access the specific values of the array. And actually, if you look at this, this functions just as a normal variable would in a different in any other context. So we can just do a dot length, and it'll give us the length of each one of those. And if we go up, go back to, let's just do a longer one just so you can see it. Boom. All right. So you see there that these are just variables, but they're all collected within the array, which is pretty cool. Definitely a great way of organizing data. PowerShell, this is sort of a standard thing across programming languages, but you know, definitely worth noting in PowerShell, especially if you start making like ActiveDirectory scripts or anything you might do. Pulling information from cloud platforms, you know, you'll be pulling this stuff back as arrays sometimes. And if you wanted to add just one more, you know, there's different ways to work with the array. And of course, we could use the get member input object to figure out what we could do to it. But if we just want to add something to it, we can actually use this operator, the plus equals. And let's just add Qui-Gon Jinn. Now, if we just print our array back, we'll see that he's listed there now. And, you know, we could call on his specifically by going to Jedi 5, or actually 4. And that's a good point right here, too, to notice that the first element of an array, and I should have said that too, that these are elements of the array. That's the nomenclature for working with arrays. Starts with 0, always starts with 0. So when we start getting into loops, I want you to be aware of that, so you're not trying to invoke an array, or you don't miss your first element of your array. So we'll see that gives us back Qui-Gon Jinn, and that's pretty sweet. So now let's move on to PowerShell Hashtables. This is kind of the same concept, but we want to, this way we can kind of like specify keys, right? And we can specify different keys to sort of give us different ways to access the data and sort of give more context to the data. And so let's go ahead and make one. Let's just call it fellowship. All right. And the way you invoke is sort of the same, except you use a curly Q bracket. And what you do is when you invoke it, so do @curlyq, and what you would do is say key1 is equal to item 1. And that might be a string, that might be a variable, whatever you want it to be. What you don't want to do is close the bracket and only have 1 in there. I mean, you can. Key2 is equal to item 2. Actually, I'll just call this fellowship beta. Oh, whoops. And what you want to do is, yeah, see, that's not anything. It's like, hey, what the heck are you trying to do there, buddy? All right. Forgot my quotes. So we'll do fellowship beta. And we'll see we've got our names and our values, our keys and our value pairs, right? So that's pretty sweet. So let's actually do a fellowship, just a fellowship. Let's actually set our fellowship. So we'll do wizard. And we'll say that's equal to Gandalf. And we'll do a hobbit. Say that's equal to Frodo. And let's just do one more. We'll do an elf. And that's equal to Legolas. Cool. And if we see these key value pairs, and we'll see the name, we'll see it broken out right there. So that's pretty sweet. Again, this is for storing more complex data sets. Just had to go over it. Hash tables are important. You're going to run into hash tables to keep using PowerShell. So what if we wanted to add something to our hash table? Well, of course, there's a method for that. So let's do fellowship and add. And we want to add, let's say, a dwarf. And his name is Gimli. All right. So if we go up, tab up to that, now we see Gimli is in our hash table. It's pretty sweet. Now, what if we want to edit that that um, key value pair that we just added to our hash table there? Well, again, another method. So what we would do is use the set item method. So there's a Gimli. Or no, we're gonna do our key first. Actually, let's see how we want to do this. Let's set our dwarf equal to Bilbo. Now let's go ahead and look at our table again. Oh, we changed it to Bilbo. And just something worth noting, you can actually get at this data kind of similar to an array. A couple different ways. We can retrieve it from fellowship dot, and we would say dwarf. That should work, yep. And kind of you can use the array notation too. And you could find your dwarf on the table, right? Yeah, I kind of feel bad doing that to Gimli, so we're picking on him here. Let's add him back to the table. We'll just reset him. All right, good deal. So that's about it for hash tables. You just, if you're following along, just made a hash table, changed it. Actually, let's just show a remove real quick. Sorry, Gimli. We'll actually just go ahead and remove you. Say if I wanted to remove it, just one more thing. If we're going to be full circle and working with these, I just want to remove the dwarf from the fellowship. Hope you guys are Lord of the Rings fans. All right. We removed him. No. Oh, he's not in the fellowship hash table. That's a bummer. So, yeah, that's about it. Now he is gone, removed from the hash table. Kind of sad. But that's about it for hash tables. I want to switch gears. Let's go on to collecting user input. All right, let's go back to our PowerShell ISE. And what I'd like to do is introduce you guys to the read host. Whoops. Cmdlet. Now the read host, too quick for you, ISE. What it can do is set a variable. You can set a variable to the read host, and it will sit there and wait for user input. So let's just go ahead and give it a shot. We'll set our favorite system to read host, and the text, you can use the prompt parameter, and you can set the text that you want it to add. It'll sort of add there while it's waiting for the input from the user. So we'll ask, what is your favorite Nintendo gaming system? And let's go ahead and save it. Give it a run. Here, I'm going to adjust this a little bit. And look, it's down here. We got our hello world. We have our no new line. Let's get rid of that. That's silly. Save that. I'll just say GameCube. Boom. All right. So if we look at the cool thing too, I didn't go over with ISE, is that these variables, you can use this just like a normal command prompt. So now that variable is set. Favorite system, GameCube. Perfect. So that's a great way if you have a script that you're deploying to somebody. People probably know I'm big on, if you know my work, I'm big on graphical user interfaces with Windows forms. But this is totally fine too. I definitely get it from a system administrator point of view, or any kind of program you're just screwing around trying to make. This is a great way to collect input back from the user to be able to work with it in some kind of way. So if we wanted to do that, we could, let's say if you want to give them options, right? We could do hello world. We just leave it. Actually, we'll just change our hello world. First script is growing more powerful. We could say, hey, what is your favorite system? And now we can give a bunch of different options here. NES, SNES, SD4, oops, GameCube. I know this is redundant. I'm gonna keep going. Whoops. I want the program to be good. Wii U. Switch. Boom. All right. No new lines on all these, so this should actually just turn around and print. I'll zoom out a little bit so we can see that a little bit better. All right, went ahead and saved it already with Control S. Let's do a run. Cool. Hey, what's your favorite system? One. We're not actually doing anything with the input yet, but you could evaluate stuff on that, and we're going to get to that. So, very cool, guys. Let's keep it rolling. If we wanted to start evaluating data, we would use what's called an if statement. So let's go ahead. I'm going to make a new script actually. And let's say we wanted to evaluate how many Pokemon someone had caught to determine if they were right Pokemon Master. So at the time of writing this, I think the total number in a Pokedex would be, in all Pokedexes, I think it's 908. So we'll set that variable. That'll just be a string. And we will evaluate on it using the if then else statement. But we'll keep it simple. First, we'll just do if then else, or yeah, if then else. So we'll say if Pokemon caught, tab complete that out there, is equal EQ. Now, as soon as we do that dash, this is giving me all the options I have for operators right here to do evaluations. And we're not going to go into all of them because we want to show you the basics here in this quick video, which is kind of getting long now. I don't think we're going to make our hour mark, which is fine. And we'll evaluate. Say, hey, if it's equal to 908, guess what? Now, when you start it, you say if, you put your condition inside the parentheses, and you put what you want it to do inside a curly cube bracket. So we'll say, hey, if you have caught 908 Pokemon, you're a Poke and Alt 0233 Mon Master. Cool, cool. Let's go ahead and save that. Pokemon Master. PowerShell script, cool. So that's just a simple if statement. So let's just play with it for a second, right? And actually, I haven't used this little clear console pane. It's a little squeegee. We'll squeegee that out. Let's press play. Hey, you're a Pokemon Master. Bam, we did it. We evaluated data. What if I caught 907? Do save. Oh, nothing. We got nothing back for you. So if the condition isn't met, what you can do is do an else statement. And to do that, you do else, and you do your curly cube bracket. Actually, we can even break this down. You'll see these written out sort of differently. Actually, boop. We'll do if. Sort of how I like to do it. Other people do it, only because I've seen it that way so many times. Well, we can do another right host. Say, hey, go catch more Poke. There's a grab over the it's a special character. Go catch more Pokemon. Cool, let's do a save. We'll do a play. Go catch more Pokemon. We'll bump us back to 908. You get the idea. Cool. So that's if then else. But another thing we can use to tack onto this is else if. So let's say if we wanted to assess the Pokemon number, right? Like in the Pokedex. Or say, for the sake of our example, let's do another new script, and we'll say we'll set a variable called Pokemon number. We'll say it's equal to 25. That's Pikachu's number. I'm not really sure on the new ones. And we'll use another operator. So we're going to get a little more complicated, right? Let's use greater than or equal. Now, I know these seem kind of weird, and if you use other programming languages, you've probably used normal operators. But it is really kind of intuitive. Greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. LT is less than, right? It's really just abbreviated, right? So let's say greater than or equal to 0 and less than or equal to 151. Oh, and it's complaining there. That's because I need a dash on my end. And what's it complaining about? Oh, because I don't have the Pokemon number. There we go. So we're evaluating it. Hey, if your Pokemon number is greater than or equal to 0 and less than or equal to, and actually if it's 0, it's not really part of Kanto, I guess. So we'll do greater than or equal to 1. There's no Pokemon 0. So you use that to evaluate like missing no or something. But anyway, So in PowerShell here, we're evaluating this variable. Say if it's greater than or equal to 1 and it's less than or equal to 151. You want to write host your Pokemon is from Kanto. Again, this is super Pokemon nerdy stuff. If you guys don't know about this, doesn't matter. The PowerShell is still important. I'm just using examples of random stuff I'm thinking of. So, very cool. So, yeah, hey, that's great. We're assessing that. But what if you want to keep going, right? Like there's more than one region in Pokemon if you don't know. There's a ton of regions. I don't even actually know what they all are. But you can do an else if and do another evaluation. So I'm a big fan of copy and pasting code, not just typing stuff out, even though I've done that quite a bit here. So the next range would be greater than or equal to 152 and less than or equal to 251. We've got another conditional that we've tacked on here, and we put it in a curly Q bracket. And that would be from the Johto region. And we could literally just do this again for the next region, which is Hoenn. So we would say 252 all the way up to 386. That's about the limit of my knowledge. I honestly haven't played them in a while. So you can see how you could really make complex evaluations off of these, and it would give you the different feedback on your evaluator right here. It's really pretty sweet. And let's go ahead and save this and give it a run. We'll do squeegee, get that cleaned off. Your Pokemon's from Kanto. I have no idea what Pokemon 200 is. Oh, whoops, yep. If you don't save, it'll give you that little pop-up. And etc. We get it, right? So that's it for else if. Pretty cool. And let's go ahead and move on to switch statements. And I want to make another new script. We're just cranking out these scripts. So a switch statement is a way of evaluating data without having to tack on different variables or different conditionals like that over and over again. So let's say we want to evaluate, we've got a variable for what house somebody is in Game of Thrones. And let's do a squeegee ahead of time. So we'll say house equals Targaryen. I don't know if this is right. Doesn't matter. It's a string variable. We're switching on that. So what we can do is use, and a switch is kind of the same way. It's got conditional, right? So we say switch based on house. Gosh, I love the autocorrect. You know, ISE is really good for being free. Developers have a lot of props for that. Deserve a lot of props for that. So we'd say switch based on that. So hey, if it's Targaryen, if the case is that it's Targaryen, did I spell that right? I don't know. Say, hey, you're crazy. And we'll close out our string. And for this conditional, or no, for this action on this condition, we'll close that out with a semicolon. Another thing we want to do in our switch statements is say, hey, once we've matched, we don't want to keep evaluating, right? So we do what's called a break. And we close it. And basically, you could take this and do a couple different houses. They do Lannister, do Stark, and we could change the messages. Hey, You always pay your debts. Stark. Nothing is bad is going to happen at the wall, right? And now you're evaluating the value of this variable with the switch statement, but you're doing different things. You're not writing if then, if then, if then over and over again, right? So it's just a cleaner way, and it's also really good for evaluating numbers. Maybe strings wasn't the best option for demoing this, but it's just a great way to evaluate data that's nice and clean and concise. Like I said, definitely numbers. I mean, if you were hunting for something specific, like, hey, if this sales tax number meets this, then it's, I don't know. Actually, I can't think of a great example right now. That's why I keep doing science fiction and fantasy stuff. We do switch house. We'll give it a little run there. We'll see that. And start. Yes, save it for me. Thank you. It gives us our message back or evaluates data in whatever way we need to for that. Really cool. Pretty straightforward. Now let's go ahead and jump into for loops. Now for loops, actually this will be our for loop. So far we've just done sort of conditional handling, right? Like we're assessing data and doing something with it based on a condition, or doing some action based on a condition. But what if I want to loop through different data, right? There's something I just want to write back a name over and over again, or I don't know why you'd want to do that. That's always just the example I go to when I'm demoing this stuff. But you want to add Active Directory users based off of an array, right? So what you can do is let's just come up with our own array here. We'll call it Halo Peeps. And if we remember, I'm gonna do an equal. If we remember, we do at, and for an array, we do the parenthesis. It was the hash table, we did the curly Q, just to recall. So we got Master Chief, we've got Cortana, we got Captain Keys. I can't really think of it. We got the Flood. I think we'll just stop there. That's probably good enough. All right, so we got some peeps there in our Halo Peeps array. And see, we want to loop through them. So we do still have a conditional, right? So with a loop, with a for loop anyway, what you do is you say for, and you've got your conditions. And then you've got your curly Q, and what you're going to do for each iteration of this loop. Now, for loop has 3 different parameters. It's got a counter. And we'll start our counter at 0. Then we do a semicolon. And then we've got our condition. So we want our counter to be less than or equal to 3. And now why 3? Because there are 4 elements of this array, and this will be real obvious once we execute it. But remember, the first element is 0. So we're going to count from 0 up to 3. And then when it's done, we don't want the loop to keep running, right? So counter plus plus. Now, if you've never seen this notation, what this is doing is taking the value of counter and adding 1 to it, like 1 to itself right there. So basically, here, I'll just go down here and do it. Counter is equal, it's like writing this. But gosh, is that a lot less typing. So we're going to loop through our array, and what we'll do is just write host. I know I keep using write host. There's more interesting stuff to do, but it's an easy thing to go back to. Holy smokes. We've got our string. Now you can write you can write a string and a variable with a write host. So we can just now close out our string, call on Halo Peeps. Now we want to call a specific element, but we're looping through the elements, right? So cool thing about that is we can just loop whatever our counter is. So we'll loop through our counter. And now we've got, we'll just call this Halo for loop. It's pretty awesome. Let's give it a roll. Actually, I'm going to squeegee that. All right, let's give it a roll. Whoa! Boom, we loop through. Now we called on those valuables. So those values, those elements, the value of the element of the array in each iteration of the loop based on the counter. So, and this bears out to what we know about arrays already, right? Halo peeps 0, element 0 is Master Chief. Element 1 is Cortana, etc. So that's just a really straightforward loop. And let's see what happens actually. I just want to play with it for demo. We said 5, right? What if we didn't know how many was in the array? It just has nothing. It keeps looping through, but it doesn't find an element 4 or 5. So it just says, hey, that's these people, whatever. And the trick around this would be to count, to have this conditional be the length, to either know it, but you could actually call the length value of Halo peeps, and I would get the number of elements, right? That's right. Let's just see Halo peeps dot length. Yeah. 4. So like, yeah, we can do that. I'm not going to validate it. Let's actually just make sure that works. So I'm understand that, right? And I do understand that that's how that would work. Oh, right. So because the length is 4, that doesn't change the element value. See, this is where it gets tricky when I talk about stuff getting tricky with working with those elements. You always remember that 0. So it gave us 1 extra element. Now, we should be able to do arithmetic right in there. Yep. So inside the parentheses, what I did right here is took the length and did a -1 to account for the fact that the element, the first element in this array is element 0, right? So this is a really good way to do it because now, no matter what, I'll just say myself, I don't know why I picked Halo. You know, it doesn't matter what size the array is that you've piped to this, that you call or loop through with this loop, it knows, right? So that's pretty cool. We can take this even further. Let's get rid of the loop. We can just save this in the same script. And let's take a look at for each loops. So now with a for each loop, you can actually take an kind of like a new instance of the element as its own object or variable. And I know that sounds weird, so let's just go ahead and do it. So each peep in Halo peeps. So for each peep in Halo peeps, we're just going to do a right host. We'll just say, hey, peep. I don't need to call it as an array anymore, right? I don't need a counter. This is a little cooler, right? This is like a little more straightforward. We'll just say, hey, peep has arrived. Let's go ahead and save it. Let's do a squeegee. Clear that out there, that silliness. Boom. Now that is super clean. And I don't have to screw with the length. So for each is just super, super cool. All right, now let's switch gears and talk about a different kind of loop. Love loops. Looping is good. Loop called the while loop. Let's go ahead and do a squeegee. And let's set up yet another array to loop through. And let's do something different this time because I don't know all the different characters from Halo. Gosh, terrible. So let's just do X-Men, Professor X. I'm just thinking as many as I can think of. It doesn't. Again, I don't know how much we actually need to do this demo, but let's make it cool, right? All right. All right, we're gonna set a counter to So we're going back to a loop that needs a counter. That's all right. But I can't, in good conscience, show you this without showing you a while loop. Because, you know, this is stuff, when you're writing your scripts, this is your toolbox. These kinds of loops, all the different options. You'll be like, oh, hey, I just used for loops forever. Found out about while loops 10 years later. That one guy. So we're going to set a counter. And a while loop is set up like this. We say while. And just like our other loops and conditionals, we've got a counter. Or we've got a condition, I mean. And we're going to use our counter. And we're going to say while the counter is not equal to 6. Again, could just use the length of the array. I just keep it. And actually, I don't want $6. I just want 6. Because that is just an integer. So we're just going to write out the X-Men's name. And we're going to do the same things. We kind of the same thing we did in the for loop. So where you invoke the elements of the array with the counter. And we just do counter plus plus down here at the end. And that's it. So we'll just say X-Men while. All right, let's give that a run. And we shoot them all back. Ironically, you could just echo that variable back, the array back. So we'll say is a mutant. Or you could do something even, just go X-Men counter, not length. We could throw the length back. That should work too. Top of it. There you go. I mean, you just throw whatever you want in there too. I mean, we're using these real simple examples. These are typically more complex, or sometimes they are really just as simple. So, while loop, great option. You know, you can get, the problem is you could get in an infinite while loop. You know, you could set it equal to some condition that's never going to be met if you never had a counter plus plus. You could say, well, counter is not equal to -1. Go ahead and save that. Do a squeegee. I'll just keep going until I stop it. Kind of funny. I mean, that's a gag. That's probably a bunch of a t-shirt you can find on Amazon. You know, hey, you know, something about an infinite while loop. But we'll go ahead and put that back. We'll do it there. And the thing I don't like about while loops, and honestly, out in the wild, it doesn't seem like you see them a lot. You see for loops, maybe, I don't know. Or for each is kind of a go-to just because of the object. Is that, you know, you're doing the counter plus plus down here. For loop, it's just a little more buttoned up to have it here. It's sort of like a predefined constraint. You know, that infinite loop thing is kind of something that people get hung up on. So that's about it for the while loops. But there is yet another loop. Of course, we'll just stick with our X-Men here. We'll stick with our same counter too. In PowerShell and other languages, there is something called a do while loop. And it's another sort of weird thing to do. And actually, I could have just left that and just reworked it, but I'll retype it. That's not a problem. So we'll say do. And this is where you define what you want to do before you define what the conditions are. So we'll say X-Men counter is a mutant. We'll close that out. But now you put your conditions down here. Conditions is not equal to 6. I know, hey, if anyone's still not asleep, I forgot to put that right there. That would have been an infinite while loop. And to tidy this up, we'll just backspace this here. And we'll do a squeegee. We'll go through it. Works the same way. Loops are loops. So it's just so straightforward. And you'll be happy to know that's the last loop I'm going to show you. So let's go ahead and move into defining functions. So now we're going to kind of get out of the programming stuff, and we're going to go into defining a function that does something, and it's going to be something super simple. And we're going to name it, well, let's just go ahead, squeegee. And how do we define a function? Now we can define a function by just typing function, what we want the name of our function to be. And we're just going to make a function that tests whether or not SpaceX is responding to pings. So we'll just ping SpaceX. We'll call it test SpaceX. And this is what the function is that we close that out. And inside of here is what we want it to do. So we just want it to ping SpaceX.com. And we'll go ahead and just name that function test SpaceX. And we will call the function. And you'll see what's really cool. I always love this, that ISE will just pick that up. It's like, yep, I made that. That's me. I want to call it. Let's go ahead and give it a run. Pinging SpaceX. Cool. And actually, if I just went to test SpaceX down here, I can now execute it. It's in the environment. It's defined within the environment. I can do that right there. I don't need to type it anymore. So that's pretty sweet. But what we can do even further is make a little bit more of an advanced function, right? So we can say I want to just notice on the pings it's got this many pings it's sending out. What if I want to be able to define that? And you can. So we're going to call it param. We're going to define our own custom param inside the function, and that's going to be ping count. But you can't just do that with ping. At least, well, maybe you can. I don't know. I'm not going to. There's another commandlet that does what ping does, but returns objects called test connection. Popped right up. Love that. Love that PowerShell. I'm always going to be a nerd about that. And we're going to say we want to call the count parameter. All right. And we want that to be whatever we set ping count to. So we can change the ping count when we call it. Now we can call it, and it already picked it up. I love that. Ping count 10. Let's say we want to ping it 10 times. I don't know why. We'll punish ourselves here. Let's clear it out. Give it a run. And you'll notice this looks a little different because this is test connection, not ping. It's not really rendering too great here because I got it super zoomed in, but we've got all 10 of our pings here, all 10 of our test connections. And that is pretty sweet. But now as an advanced function, we may want to say, hey, look, if I don't have a ping count here, I don't think this is going to work. I actually don't. Yep, because it needs that count function. Well, we can make something a little bit more advanced with commandlet bindings. So what we would do is set a commandlet binding. And I'll just throw this here. Turns into advanced function. It's like, wait, why, what the heck is this thing? Why are we calling this? So we still have our parameter bindings, but now what we can do is make that parameter mandatory. And we can further define this. Well, we can define it as a string. I think we should be able to define it as an int 32, actually. I think string would work. I'm trying to think now. Let's try int 32. Maybe it needs to be a string. I don't know. Let's give it a shot. We're out here doing PowerShell stuff. What happens when I do it now? Hey, it knows that it's mandatory and it asks me for it. I love that. I mean, that is just like a super cool thing. All right, we'll do 7 pings to SpaceX. Want to be blocked from SpaceX's website, probably. All right, cool. So that's a way to just make a slightly better function when you're making custom functions. And let me just back up. I should have said before we're jumping into this. This is the problem with doing this in roughly one cut. You know, why do we want to do functions? Because we have a task that we want to do over and over again, right? So if we need to ping SpaceX over and over again, and I don't need to, I don't need to know why. I don't want to type SpaceX.com and all this. This is too long. This is shorter. I mean, if nothing else, it's shorter, right? But it'd be way more complex reasons to be able to do this. You could have tons of different parameters, just like the commandlets that are built into PowerShell. And making custom functions is really just a huge piece of PowerShell scripting that we can't ignore. So now this is something that's also real interesting. I want to jump into make a new script to error handling and exceptions. So think of an exception. It's like an event that is created when a normal error handling can't deal with the issue, right? It's like, hey, I don't like. It's one thing to have error handling, but there's other times there's like exceptions, like, hey, what is this? What's going on here? PowerShell doesn't know what to do. So like trying to divide a number by 0, right? Or if you were like had an infinite while loop and you ran out of memory because it just totally hosed the machine's memory. Those are kinds of things that would create exceptions. And if you're copying other people's code, my code included, and I do it, sometimes we're just trying to slap as a system engineer. We're just trying to slap stuff together to make it work. Thank you to our security people that catch our stuff that's not good. But oftentimes if we don't have time to make something super resilient, we're not. So there might be exceptions all over there. So one exception one way to throw an exception is to just use the throw command. We'll just throw out it's a trap. And we'll save that. Exceptions. It's a trap. Exception. We found an exception. All right. That's cool. So let's go ahead and do use the write error commandlet. Thank you, ISE. And we'll do the message. It's a trap. And it's got a parameter called error action. And with that, we want to stop. So let's go ahead. Do a play on that. Same thing. It's a trap. Actually, we don't want to squeegee that out. It's a trap. It's a trap twice before. All right. So what we can do to handle these errors is using what's known as a try catch. And actually, no, hang on a second. We really need to do this as part of our SpaceX function over here. So again, what we're doing right now, we're just demoing error handling. And I can't ignore error handling because it's such an important piece. So now we have our error action. So we'll try, and actually hang on a second. I do a curly Q. It's complaining. Test space X. And we'll do an error action. Stop. And we'll catch that. If that happens, we'll catch it. And we'll write output. Just do write host, but maybe you can't with an error action. We'll just say, hey, there's a launch problem because we're nerds. And then we'll, per the syntax, we'll write whatever the output is. So this will grab the output of the error action. Close that with a curly Q. What do we get? We're forcibly throwing the error. We'll just do 2. Launch problem. Again, probably didn't need to go through this, but I don't know. I actually do want to show try catch, and I do want to show really what you'd want to do this for is if you'd want to evaluate this test connection, right? And this is always going to work. So this is sort of a bad example, unless SpaceX.com went down right now. But and say, hey, look, if this fails, I want to throw an error action. And this would throw the error action, and you'd have other handling this way you have a handling mechanism for that error. That's not just an if statement or writing to a log or whatever. So that is it for the error handling. Let's switch gears. I know that's a lot of stuff. If you're sticking with me, I appreciate you. We're well over an hour. But this is a lot of different PowerShell stuff that we're going over here right now, and it's pretty good stuff. I mean, the fundamentals we've gone over, we're able to do. You'd be able to do quite a bit. You should be able to jump into a PowerShell script and kind of see what it's doing. Figure out what Cmdlets are doing. See what modules there are, and figure out what's going on. So let's switch gears back to our PowerShell console window. And I want to do a little bit of, without the pipe, let's create a file. It's just straightforward stuff. It's not terribly exciting, but it is 100% exciting because it's PowerShell. Let's use the new item Cmdlet, and this will create a new item into our namespace. And what I want to do is create an ewok text file in our scripts folder, even though it's not really a script. So we'll do scripts ewok, not ework, text type file. We specify that in the parameter, and we can create the value, and we'll just say praise C3PO. Boom. And it gives us that output back. Hey, what's the right time? What was the length of that? What just happened? LS. Look at all the different stuff we made now. We just made an ewok.txt. You've now used the new item Cmdlet, which is pretty cool. But another system thing you may want to do is create a new folder. So let's go ahead and do that. And you can use new item for this as well. That's why I like new item, because it's just more versatile, right? So we'll say C scripts, and then we'll give it a name. And we'll just call it the Death Star. Why not? Let's stick with Star Wars. And the type, a directory. How we do an LS? We see our Death Star directory right there. Boom. Pretty straightforward. Now, what if we want to copy something, right? So let's go back. Let's make oh, let's copy our ewok, actually. Let's copy our ewok text file into the Death Star. ewoks in the Death Star. So what we would do is we'll say, hey, let's find our, let's tab complete this ewok. So the copy item commandlet, real straightforward. Even Linux would just be a CP, source and destination, except that you do specify the parameter. So C scripts Death Star, boom. So let's change directory into the Death Star. Do an ls, and we see our ewok text is there. If we move up, ewok text is still there because we didn't move it. All we did was copy it. Now, if you did want to move it, let's say we want to move our, what do we have there? Force with who? We could do the move item. And again, we do the path parameter. We find it. And actually, I'm not even doing this, but force with who text, I don't need to keep specifying the whole path. But I do need to specify the destination. And actually, I don't think I need to specify that. Death Star, force with who. And look in the Death Star, and we see it there. Hey, we're moving files around. We're having a good time. This is pretty awesome. All right. Now, if I wanted to delete a file, we don't really need that ewok text here anymore, right? So what we could do is the remove, whoa. Don't want to tab complete when you have a million other modules installed. Remove item, and we'll just do ewok text. And if there's some reason that we didn't want to, we thought this wasn't going to go through, we could do a force. Oh, no. I think it would be dash force, actually. Actually, I'm not sure, but I don't think actually we need to do that. We can just remove it. Oh, I'm in the Death Star, so I just removed it from the Death Star. So, sorry. Pay attention to what directory you're in. That could be dangerous in a production environment. Cool. So, what if I wanted to just confirm if a file is there? Well, PowerShell's got a great commandlet for that called testPath. And no parameters needed. C scripts, Death Star. We don't even need Death Star. See, if you're tab completing it, it's probably not there. You can almost test the path. So yeah, that's kind of ironic. We'll just test it. Test path. And what does that return to us? A Boolean. Very cool. So that would be something you could run into your if conditional and say, hey, if test path, and you wouldn't even need to put anything else because an if statement would evaluate it off of the true, right? So that is about it for some of the file stuff I wanted to go over. Actually, let's do a rename. Let's rename our force with who. So we would say path force with who, and then we have to use the new name parameter. And we don't specify the path here, I don't think. Force with me, text. Do an ls? Hey, force with me. We did it. Again, why go over this stuff? In scripting, you're going to be using files sometimes, and this is just good basic kind of file handling to know. So I wanted to go over it with you guys. Now, it's time to switch gears yet again. I want to show you as the last little bit of this PowerShell programming tutorial how to work with ActiveDirectory. If I didn't, I would feel kind of weird, because a lot of people are learning this to work with ActiveDirectory. So I have a test environment right here that I used recently at a conference. It's a school. We got some users in there. So let's go ahead. that. Now, I'm going to run this as administrator. I gotta keep scrolling around because I have my window kind of a wonky size right now. So let's go ahead and do an import module. I've already got this installed. Active Directory. Boop. All right. That is how you import a module. Now we have all of the commandlets available to us from the Active Directory module. And the first one I want to use is Get-ADUser. And we're going to look up Mr. F. Baggins. And boom! We found our user just like that. Get-ADUser. Now this, again, like I said, I already made this is a totally test environment that I have that I use for training stuff and presentations, etc. And I've already got a user named Frodo Baggins with the user F Baggins. We just found him. And now now that he is and we can see just the basic information about him right there. But what we can actually do is we can set him to a variable. So let's say user, let's call it, oh geez, we got so much stuff. This is where tab complete can get you. Can I get AD-user? All right, cool. F Baggins. Now we see user. Actually, I'll do a clear there, and let's. So sorry about that, guys. We'll do a user. All right. So what we can do is with the user variable, if you do a dot, I can start tabbing through. I can get at the variables or at the values for that user. So there's this distinguished name. We'll go back to the dot. Check. Yeah, that was a good one. If it's enabled, the given name. Let's see, why isn't the... Oh, give name. Given name. What the difference is there? Yeah, there we go. We've got Mr. Frodo right there. Pretty sweet. Now you could actually, so this is great, right? You can pull information out, get at what you needed to. Say you wanted to loop through a bunch of users, you can get a collection of users, or you only want to display different information, right? Like I want to take his user dot given name, pipe it to out file users.txt. Let's do a cat. Yeah, we can see the value of that, right? So you can start adding more and more information. I mean, this is a great way you can start pulling data out of AD, you know, in a script that you have in ISE, right, that you're putting together. I don't know what the use case is. I'm just kind of, again, the purpose of this video is to show you guys different stuff PowerShell is capable of. I think that's great. And actually, you can now, let's do a different commandlet with Active Directory. Let's do a Set-ADUser. Let's say we want to change Frodo's name. Let's change his surname. Set-ADUser. So what we have to do when we do that is add him to a different, or specify the identity, which would be Baggins, and say we want to set the surname. We want to change his last name to my name, Tyler. That's right. I wanted to name my son Frodo. All right. So let's go back to the Get-ADUser. F Baggins. Oh, and see, it doesn't have surname. Oh, yep, it does right there. Yeah, I didn't change his name up here, but I did change his surname right here. So obviously you would have, if you were changing someone's name, you would want to do that over and over in all the appropriate spots. But if you were making like a syncing script that's synced off of like a CSV or something somewhere out in the wild, you know, this would be a great option you can start setting these. You would use Set-ADUser to change them to reflect whatever your data source is. So that might be, depending on your environment, that could be a payroll system, that could be some other identity management system, like a school information system. That's where we set a lot of our data in the school environments, right? So yeah, there's just a lot of different applications there. So I want to go over adding a user to a group. This is really straightforward. Hopefully I do it right. I've said that about a handful of things, and we've just kept moving. So I appreciate you guys not being too harsh on me. This is a lot of stuff to go over. So I want to add a group member. Add AD group. Whoa, number. And with this, you're actually specifying the group first, right? Because you're kind of doing something to the group. You're not really doing something to the user. Kind of both, but you're adding the user to the group. So I already have a group named Fellowship, and I'm going to go ahead and add fbaggins. Bang. All right. So if we let's scroll down here, guys, to bear with me. So if I go to the groups here, and check out my members. There he is. Hey, I did that with PowerShell. It's pretty sweet. Frodo Baggins is part of my fake school's administration too, by the way. Yeah, so that would be how you would do that. And then let's say if I wanted to remove him, we do the same thing. It's actually just a different commandlet. Are you sure? Yes. And I don't know if I need to refresh. I'm going to check the fellowship members. Oh my gosh, he's out of the fellowship. So pretty straightforward. I want to show you guys too. Like on that Set-ADUser, I don't know how many people are doing this. You really want to have these advanced features here, because when you drill into a user, you can now see not there, the attribute. There's a ton of different things to be set. A lot of different properties, and just want to make sure if you're hunting for something, you need to know the name of it, because some of the names are weird. Like, would you know that surname was last name, right? Why is that not here? Oh no. This is like related to the SID, I believe, actually. So yeah, never mind about that. Other than I will say, just leave that open, right? Just because you leave that checked in the view, you get all this extra stuff that you can see here. So let's actually add a new user too, while we're doing it. So we'll use the New-ADUser. And there's a bunch of different stuff you gotta specify when you're doing this. So I'm just gonna add, jeez, I don't know. I've added so many characters to this. I don't think I've added any Star Wars to this AD environment. So let's add Luke Skywalker. So we're gonna specify the name. We'll specify the given name, which would just be his first name, which is Luke. And we'll do the surname, Skywalker. And then we'll do the Sam account name. And that would just be like his username. We'll just do L Skywalker. What's we have to do? Oh yeah, the user principal name. Jeez, I got one just sitting right there. User principal name. L Skywalker at Set.org, that's the domain we're in. And the path. Oh yeah. So we'll put them in administration. Does that distinguish name on this? I don't know. So that would be OU. And actually, that attribute editor I just showed you guys, that's a good spot to get this if you need to figure out what this is exactly. OU equals staff, not dash. OU equals maids. DC equals maids. So obnoxious. DC equals org. Should be good if I spelled everything right. And what if we want to set a default password? So to do this, it's got to be a secure string. So there's a commandlet called convert to dash secure string. Say Uncle ON1 or exclamation. So we gotta put that in the string. Oh yeah, that's right. And we'll say that's as plain text, right? So we're not using encryption. This isn't a really great security practice, but it's a way to do this. We're gonna force that because it might complain about that. And let's just specify that Luke is enabled. And we'll set that to the true variable. Bloop. And boom, wow, one command. Yeah, great. Let's see if it actually dumped him there. And we have to refresh. Ah, there he is. Scroll up there, Luke Skywalker. Take all the information I wanted. I see that this is actually the email field. So if you look in the user principal name, where that is. Yeah, it's right there, L. That's what that would be derived off of. Yeah, I mean, you could do that same thing. You could set the enabled to false. And you'd have a disabled user to start. So, yeah, that's pretty straightforward way to make a user. Not bad. If you had an automated script that you wanted to do this, this would be the command you would want to use it right now. And again, if you need to know how to do anything in PowerShell, just Google, how do I do this in PowerShell? And you can find it. So let's say, hell, I screwed up and I wanted to change that. Let's go back up to find our Set-ADUser. Wait, hey, Uncle O1 is not what our default password's supposed to be. Are you crazy? I believe the same, we should be able to do this just like this. Not I believe, I know I've done this a bunch of times. Yeah, so we would, yeah, you wouldn't do it like you would as a parameter there. Oh no, or do you do it like that? Let's see. Convert to secure string. Oh, Watto. Oh, he doesn't know Watto. What am I talking about? Ben Kenobi. Oh yeah, but we don't want to. We do the as plain text. And we'll force that. And I think we're good there. Oh no. Parameter cannot be found that matches the parameter name account. password. All right, yeah, no, that's not how you do that. Just want to ignore all that. Actually, the way you would do it is, I totally forgot. Set AD account password identity L Skywalker. Reset new password. Oh, I was trying to do that way. Threw me off when I saw it being done that other way. You know, but hey, there you go. And we do the same thing. Convert to secure string as plain text. Old Ben. I think I did Uncle Ben, right? Of course. Boom, boom. And then you have your security requirements. That's right. So when you make a new user, you can give it a crappy password, but oh yeah, no, I take it back. In this environment, it's not. It's just not long enough. Old Ben, 1, 2, 3. There you go. Reset his password. That's how you reset a password. Ignore that other stuff. Still a good idea. Good troubleshooting when you're doing commands. Just it doesn't matter how much you know. If you're not doing it all day with PowerShell, you're not gonna remember off the top of your head right away, guys. But yeah, so that's good stuff. I think that's all I had that I wanted to go over with in this this video. I really appreciate you guys. Definitely check out more videos. Just anything else you want to learn about PowerShell, just Google it. No, definitely. I mean, that's true. Check out my classes on Udemy. I'll have links to those in the description. And check out some of my other videos for sure. Subscribe to my newsletter, jimtyler.substack.com, and check out my website, PowerShellEngineer.com. Give me a follow on Twitter at PowerShellEng. I'd love to follow you. I follow back. I really appreciate you guys. I hope you learned something about PowerShell. PowerShell is an amazing tool, and that's why I sat down and made this video, because I just love working with it. A lot of fun. I hope you guys continue your PowerShell journey. Keep learning stuff. Make your organizations better. Automate stuff. And don't be afraid to make mistakes. I made mistakes in this video, and I'm leaving them in, because you know what? We're not all perfect. We're not experts, but we do have something to offer. So thanks so much, guys. Like the video, subscribe, comment with questions, corrections. Appreciate that. And I will see you guys all around. Goodbye.